On family dinner night, my parents told me to give my rent money to my cousin because she's the real breadwinner. I looked at them and said, then why did she steal my resume? Everyone went dead silent when I played the voicemail from her boss. I don't know how I ended up sitting at my parents' dinner table that night, feeling like the odd one out. The food was all set, my mom's famous roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and steamed vegetables, but the tension in the room was palpable. My cousin Violet was there, as usual, looking perfect as always. I couldn't help but feel this knot in my stomach every time I saw her. She wasn't just pretty, she was everything I was supposed to be, but never was. Perfect grades, perfect job, and always the center of attention. My parents never said it, but I knew they saw her as the golden child. I had always been the quiet one, the one who stayed out of the spotlight. I worked hard, yes, but I wasn't exactly setting the world on fire. I had a stable job in marketing, a modest apartment, and a routine that worked for me. But that night, my simple life was about to be turned upside down. We were all talking as usual, discussing work and family stuff, when my dad dropped the explode. You know, Violet's been working so hard lately, he said, his voice carrying across the table. And she's really been keeping this family afloat. I looked over at Violet, sitting across from me, and saw her glance down at her plate. Something in her eyes told me that this wasn't just about her work ethic, it was about something more. My dad continued, Lily, you've been doing fine, but we think it's time you step up and help out a little more. Violet needs some support right now. I wasn't sure what he meant. What do you mean by help out, Dad? My mom, sitting next to him, chimed in. Well, Violet's been struggling a bit financially. Her job's demanding more and more, and she's really carrying the load for all of us, don't you think? Violet nodded, but it wasn't the nod of someone who was desperate. It was the nod of someone who had been rehearsing this. I could see it in her eyes, this was all part of the plan. So, we were thinking that you could help Violet with her rent for a few months, my dad said, not even looking at me. You know, since she's the real breadwinner in this family now. She could really use some help. My stomach dropped. Wait, what? I said, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. You want me to give my rent money to her? Lily, my mom said, her tone softening but still firm. It's not just about you. Violet has been pulling a lot of weight. You've got a stable job, and we think you should be able to pitch in. Help her out. She's doing so much for all of us. I was stunned, not just by the request but by how nonchalant my parents were about it. Violet was, what? Struggling? She was the one always praised for being perfect, the one who everyone looked to for advice. She wasn't struggling. Not in any way that I could see. You want me to give her my rent money? I asked, feeling my voice rise. But I'm barely making it as it is. My paycheck is enough to get by. I can't just give her my money. My dad didn't blink. You've got a good job, Lily. You can afford it. She's the one doing all the heavy lifting. It's time for you to step up. I couldn't even process what was happening. This wasn't like my parents. They were always so strict, so fair. But now, they were completely siding with Violet. I was trying to stay calm, but inside I was seething. You're asking me to sacrifice my own stability for her? I could feel my chest tightening. I don't think I can do that. Violet, sitting across from me, cleared her throat. I don't want to cause trouble, Lily. It's just, things have been hard lately. I didn't mean to ask, but I thought it would be easier if we just, all pitched in. I stared at her, trying to understand. Was she really asking me to give her my rent money so she could afford her fancy apartment, her new clothes, and her promotion? The same promotion she had stolen from me? Suddenly, something clicked in my mind. I had to know if what I was thinking was true. My hands were shaking as I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. Violet, I said, keeping my voice steady, I've been meaning to ask you about something for a while now. Her eyes flickered nervously as she tried to maintain her calm demeanor. What's that? Your promotion, I said slowly. Did you use my resume to get it? Her face went pale. I turned on my phone and clicked on the voicemail I had saved from her boss earlier that week. As the voicemail played, I saw Violet squirm in her seat. The voice on the other end was unmistakable, Karen, the HR director at the company Violet worked for. Violet, I need to speak with you about something important. It's about the resume you submitted for the marketing position. We've reviewed it, and we noticed something strange. The resume was eerily similar to someone else's. To Lily Sinclair's resume, in fact. How did you come across that? I let the voicemail play for another few seconds, watching Violet's face grow darker with every word. My mom's expression turned from one of concern to confusion, and my dad's face slowly morphed from indifference to something resembling regret. The voicemail continued, "We're going to have a serious discussion about this next week, Violet. If this was an honest mistake, we can discuss it. But if this was intentional, there will be consequences." When the voicemail ended, the silence in the room was suffocating. I looked at Violet, whose eyes were glued to her lap. I could see her lips trembling as she tried to find the words. "Violet," I said softly, "did you really steal my resume to get that promotion? You know I didn't want to be in that position. I don't want to take credit for your work." I didn't mean to," Violet interrupted, her voice cracking. I thought I needed it. I thought it was the only way. I didn't think it would come back to this." I could hear the sincerity in her voice, but it didn't change the fact that she'd crossed a line. A huge line. My parents exchanged a look. My dad was the first to speak. "Violet, did you really steal her resume? Was that what you did?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't want to hurt anyone. I just wanted to get ahead. I thought maybe if I just, I could fix things." "I'm sorry, Lily." I felt a strange calm wash over me. Not anger. Not frustration. But a deep, cold sense of betrayal. How could she do this to me? How could she lie so easily, make everything look like I was the one in the wrong? I didn't know what to say next, and to be honest, I didn't want to say anything. Not yet. But there was still one more thing I needed to do. I had to know what my parents thought now that they knew the truth. I turned to them, my voice steady but firm. "So, now that you know the truth, what's the next step? Am I still supposed to give her my rent money?" My mom looked at my dad, her eyes welling up with tears. "Lily, I don't know. This is a lot to take in." "Yeah," my dad said slowly, "this changes things." The silence that followed was heavy, uncomfortable, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. Finally, the truth was out. Finally, I wasn't the one being asked to sacrifice everything. But as I looked at my family, at Violet, at my parents, I realized that maybe the hardest part wasn't facing what had happened. It was realizing that I had to make my own decisions now. I wasn't just the daughter, the one who went along with everything. I had to take control of my life. And that was exactly what I was going to do. The silence in the room was suffocating. It felt like an eternity, but it was only a few seconds before Violet wiped her eyes, still trembling. My dad glanced at my mom, and then at me, but I could tell he wasn't sure how to process what had just happened. My mom looked lost, like she was caught between wanting to comfort Violet and somehow defending me, though I could see the shame in her eyes. I wasn't sure what to do next either. My hands were still gripping my phone, the tension from playing the voicemail still hanging in the air. I didn't know if I should yell, cry, or just walk out the door. What I did know was that I wasn't the same person who had walked into that dinner. Something had shifted in me, a clarity that made it easier to see how much of my life had been spent bending over backward for other people. Finally, my dad broke the silence, his voice low but sharp. "I can't believe you did this, Violet. You've always been the one everyone turned to, the one we all looked up to. And now, this?" Violet didn't answer right away. She just kept her face hidden behind her hands. Her shoulders were shaking with silent sobs, and I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But the weight of everything I had just learned made me angry. Angrier than I'd been in a long time. She had been playing this role of the perfect, successful cousin for so long that it seemed impossible she had ever been anything else. "You didn't think this through, did you?" I said, my voice cutting through the tension. "You didn't think about how much this would hurt me, or how much it would hurt you, if anyone found out. And now look where we are." Violet's eyes lifted slowly to meet mine, and for a moment, I saw the vulnerability in them. But it wasn't enough to erase the anger that had built up inside me. She wasn't the only one who had been carrying a weight, even if she'd convinced everyone else that she was. For years, I had watched her take credit for things that weren't hers. I'd watched my parents, in their own way, praise her for every little thing, and I just accepted it. I was always the one who was supposed to understand. The one who was supposed to quietly cheer her on from the sidelines. But now, I saw things clearly. I wasn't her backup. I wasn't supposed to exist in the shadow of her success. I had my own life to live, my own dreams and ambitions. And for once, I wasn't willing to let my cousin's mistakes, or my parents' enabling, dictate how I moved forward. "I'm sorry," Violet whispered, still trying to collect herself. "I really am. I didn't think it would go this far. I didn't think it would hurt you." "I'm not hurt, Violet," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm angry. I'm frustrated that you thought it was okay to do this. You can't just take someone else's hard work and expect them to smile and say, 'It's fine, go ahead.' This isn't the kind of thing you can just apologize for. You can't just say sorry and expect it to fix everything." The words hung heavy in the air. The guilt was clear on Violet's face, but I didn't know if that was enough. Maybe for some people it would have been. But not for me. Not anymore. My dad shifted uncomfortably in his seat, looking at my mom, who now had tears in her eyes. "We've always tried to do what was best for everyone," my dad said slowly. "But I didn't realize how much this was affecting you, Lily. Maybe we were wrong, pushing so hard for Violet. Maybe we got caught up in the idea of her being the perfect one." I glanced over at my mom, who wiped her eyes and nodded quietly. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. The acknowledgement felt like a small victory. My parents weren't perfect, far from it, but this was the first time I'd felt like they were seeing me, truly seeing me, as more than just the other child, the one who didn't need as much attention. Maybe this wasn't going to change everything, but it was a start. "I didn't mean to take away from you, Lily," Violet whispered, her voice barely audible. "I never meant for you to feel like you didn't matter. I thought I needed to do this to survive. I thought I needed to be the one to have it all, to have everything together. I didn't know how much you were giving up to make this work." I closed my eyes for a moment, taking in her words. It wasn't enough, not yet. But it was a start. For once, Violet seemed to see me, even if it took stealing my resume for her to understand how far she was willing to go. "I don't know if I can forgive you for this, Violet," I said quietly. "It's not just about the resume or the money or what happened tonight. It's everything. The way you've always been the one who gets everything, while the rest of us are left picking up the pieces. I'm tired of being the one who just lets it happen." There was no response to that. Violet just nodded, still crying softly into her hands. I didn't know what to do with myself. I wasn't sure if I even wanted her apology. It felt like it was too little, too late. The damage had already been done, and no amount of words would take it back. I looked at my parents, wondering if they really understood the weight of everything that had just come to light. This wasn't just about my cousin's mistakes, it was about a pattern of behavior that had been allowed to flourish for years. They had always been the ones to praise Violet, to elevate her to a level that no one else in the family could reach. I had spent years in the background, always trying to please everyone, never standing up for myself. And tonight, it felt like that silent resentment had finally exploded into the open. We're family, my dad said quietly after a long pause. We should be helping each other. I'm sorry, Lily. I didn't realize how much you were being asked to sacrifice. I didn't respond right away. Part of me wanted to yell, to tell him how much I had sacrificed for years, but another part of me just wanted to let the silence stretch on. I wanted to leave, to get out of this room where I had spent so much of my life feeling like I didn't matter. You can't just take from people and expect them to keep giving, I said after a long pause, my voice firm. It doesn't work like that. There was a deep, quiet sigh from Violet. She wiped her face one last time, her tears slowing. I know, she said softly. I've been wrong. The room went silent again. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't resolved. But for the first time, I felt like I wasn't the only one carrying the burden. Finally, Violet was facing the consequences of her actions. Finally, my parents were seeing how much I had been overlooked. But that didn't mean I felt any better about the situation. It didn't change how deeply this had hurt me. As I sat there, I couldn't help but wonder, what was I supposed to do now? Would my family actually change, or was this just another moment of empty words? Could I trust Violet again, or was this a pattern that would keep repeating itself? The room remained eerily quiet, the weight of everything hanging in the air. I could feel the anger in my chest start to settle into something else, something colder, but not without purpose. I wasn't about to let this go, but I also wasn't going to let my emotions dictate how I handled the situation. I had worked hard for everything I had, and for once, I wasn't about to let Violet, or anyone else, make me feel small. Violet was still sniffling, her face buried in her hands. I had never seen her like this. For all her confidence, for all the times she had strutted through life acting like the perfect daughter, she was a mess now. I didn't feel sorry for her, not anymore. She had made her bed, and now she was going to lie in it. My parents, meanwhile, were still looking back and forth between us, unsure of what to say next. My mom, who had always been quick to defend Violet, seemed to be having a hard time formulating the right words. Maybe it's time we all take a step back and figure out how we move forward, my dad finally said, his voice soft but tinged with frustration. Lily, I understand that this is a lot to take in. And Violet, you have a lot to make up for. I nodded, taking a deep breath, but I wasn't sure where to go from there. The truth was, I wasn't angry anymore. What I felt now was a deep sense of satisfaction. Not because I wanted to watch Violet suffer, but because I had finally taken control. I wasn't the one who had been wronged, I was the one who had been ignored, overlooked, and told to just accept things as they were. Tonight, I had taken a stand, and that alone made me feel stronger than I had in years. I'm not going to give her my rent money, Dad, I said, my voice steady. I have worked hard for everything I have, just like Violet says she has. And if she wants to get ahead in life, she's going to have to do it on her own, without stealing from me or anyone else. My dad was quiet for a moment, as if the finality of my words had just hit him. I understand, Lily, he said quietly. I shouldn't have asked you to do that. Violet's face turned pale, and she wiped her eyes one last time, still looking at the ground. I didn't know how else to fix things, she whispered, but there was no conviction in her voice. It was clear that she was only apologizing because she had no choice. She didn't regret the actions that led her to this moment, only the fact that she had gotten caught. I think we've all learned something tonight, I said, standing up from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I could feel my resolve strengthening with every word I spoke. I'm not going to keep letting people walk all over me just because it's easier for everyone else. My mom stood up too, her eyes tired and a little lost. Lily, no, I interrupted, holding my hand up. I need to say this. I've been the quiet one, the one who never rocked the boat. But not anymore. I'm done putting everyone else's needs ahead of mine. I've spent too many years being the one who just goes along with things. But tonight, I'm putting myself first. The room went quiet again, and for the first time, I saw my dad's expression soften. I think you're right, he said slowly. I think we've all been wrong about a lot of things. But that's no excuse for how we've treated you, Lily. You deserve better. For the first time, my parents were finally seeing me, hearing me, and realizing that I wasn't going to be the doormat anymore. This wasn't just about the money or the stolen resume. It was about the years of invisible labor I had been doing for this family, sacrificing my time, my energy, my emotional health, just to keep the peace. Violet, still sniffling, lifted her head. "What do you want from me, then?" she asked, her voice shaky. "What can I do to make this right?" I looked at her, my gaze steady. "You can start by not stealing from people anymore. And you can stop acting like the world owes you everything just because you think you deserve it." Violet's face crumpled, but there was no sympathy in my heart. Maybe one day, she would get the message. Maybe she wouldn't. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. I turned toward the door, grabbing my coat from the hook by the door. "I'm leaving. I'll figure out my own life from here. But I won't be the one to keep cleaning up the messes other people make." As I walked out the door, I could hear my parents calling after me, but I didn't turn back. I didn't need their validation anymore. I didn't need their approval. For the first time in my life, I was walking away from a situation where I had always been the one to sacrifice for everyone else. Later that night, after I had gotten home, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. I sat down on my couch, staring at the walls of my small apartment. The place wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I had worked hard for everything I had. No one had handed me anything. And I realized that the key to moving forward wasn't just about confronting people like Violet or demanding apologies from my parents. It was about making peace with myself. The next day, I received a call from Karen, Violet's boss. I hadn't expected it, but when I heard her voice on the other end, I felt a small sense of vindication. She had been reviewing Violet's actions, and from what she said, it didn't look good for Violet. The company was considering taking action against her for ethical violations related to the stolen resume, and Karen wanted to hear my side of the story. It wasn't a call I had expected, but in that moment, I realized that sometimes justice worked itself out. I didn't need to be the one to make Violet pay. She would have to face the consequences on her own. But that didn't mean I wasn't going to take steps to make sure she understood the cost of her actions. I had already made my point with my family. I had already set boundaries. And now, I could finally let go of the bitterness that had been building inside me for years. In the weeks that followed, Violet's world slowly started to crumble. Her promotion was rescinded, and her relationship with my parents was strained. They finally realized that they had been enabling her behavior for too long. They saw her for what she truly was, a person who took without ever giving back. I didn't say anything to them. I didn't need to. My silence was enough. As for me, I kept moving forward. I focused on my work, built stronger friendships, and made choices that were about me for once. I didn't need revenge or cruelty to feel satisfied. The satisfaction came from knowing I had stood up for myself, for the first time in my life.